Okay, so the next characteristic, unity for liberation. So anti-dialogical practices seek division, whereas dialogical practices seek unity for liberation. So in other words, synthesizing discussions from previous chapters, the entire point of dialogical practices is to unify for and through liberation. It is not to flip it so that now the oppressed are the oppressors. It is to unify and continue to engage in permanent critical reflection and action that seeks transformation, to humanize society, a group, etc. So the third characteristic on organization. So in order to actually unify people, leaders need to assist with organizing people around the common task of the struggle for liberation. So Freire suggests organization should occur around the consistency of words and actions. So the boldness to confront risks, increase action, encouraging love through the liberation of humankind rather than demonizing oppressors. So some considerations around organization include thinking about the consistency between words and actions when you're organizing and communicating, the overall boldness to confront risks, increasing action, encouraging love through liberation of humankind rather than demonizing oppressors, and having faith in people. Now, an important note is that revolutionary leaders also need to organize themselves with the people, not just among other leaders. So this is one of the many reasons why I actually don't refer to myself as Dr. O'Leary, and why you will often see me presenting at conferences like international conferences while wearing the same clothing that I would wear in the classroom or at the grocery store. So like jeans and a shirt. One of the reasons why I do this is I want to align myself with the people I went into education for, rather than separate myself as being an outsider sitting on some kind of an ivory tower in academia. Now, that being said, some people will view my attire and resistance to my title as being unprofessional or uncaring. However, I would argue that's perpetuating a form of oppression, where some ways of being are intended to speak on the behalf of other educators and students rather than with educators or students. So, as a more concrete example of this, if you happen to go to a research-heavy conference, you'll notice a lot of people walking around in suits. Whereas if you go to the practitioner-heavy conferences, you'll notice a lot of people will walk around in shorts, t-shirts, things like that. A question that I have for that kind of contrast is, what does that say about the kinds of people who can engage in and discuss research? In my opinion, equating professionalism to wearing expensive forms of attire and going by titles such as Dr. blah 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 are forms of separating yourself from practitioners. It's also a form of separating yourself from lower socioeconomic status. So I don't wear a suit when I go to those presentations, and I certainly stand out. So my question for listeners is, whose narratives are being forwarded when we have a definition of what is considered to be, quote, professional dress or attire? Why are we trying to look like politicians or business executives when we attend conferences? Why are we trying to look like we work in an office when we are helping kids? There's no right or wrong answer to this, just kind of posing it as something to think through. So my larger point is that if we are going to be organizing ourselves as leaders, we need to make sure that we organize ourselves with the communities, with the kids, with the parents, etc., that we are trying to assist through liberatory and critical pedagogical practices. Okay, so I'll end my rant right there.
This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast is from episode number 56, which is titled Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Chapter 4. You can listen to the full episode and hundreds more by searching for the CSK8 podcast on your favorite podcast app or by going to jaredoleary.com.